views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, it's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and editors, journalists, photographers, filmmakers, and sometimes artisans, people who put stuff out in the Bronx. The idea is to get you inside what they're thinking about and doing as they put stuff out. And this evening, we're going to talk some very inside politics, national politics, and local politics with a top flight journalist, and also change hats and talk about art in the Bronx right after that. So let's start with Rebecca C. Lewis, as she's written on her byline from City and State, New York. Nice to have you with us, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. What motivated the invitation was, and I'm going to hold it up, and you can see it's a well-worn issue because Gary actually read it and read it cover to cover, as he does every week. And that is Buckle Up, Chuck, your story about the now Senate Majority Leader, Charles Schumer. First of all, I thought it would be interesting for the people watching to get some insight as to what it's like for, let's say, a New York based reporter to get an interview with a Senate Majority Leader. First, who you got the assignment? You thought, hey, why don't I do this? The people at the magazine said, why don't you do this? How did it start?
He's becoming the first New York, or has becoming at the time, the first New York majority leader in the Senate, and we couldn't not cover him. So it was an assignment of cover what he's gonna do for New York. What does this mean for New York? Someone as New Yorky as Chuck Schumer, and I know firsthand. He spoke at both my high school and my college graduation and gave the same exact speech as I'm sure many people who went to school in New York, and especially those who work in politics, are probably familiar with.
I can certainly appreciate that. He was not in office when I went to high school or college, so he didn't speak at mine. However, I attended for various reasons a number of college graduations, and in some cases he simply showed up, and nobody could say no to the senator of New York. So they said, "All right, you get a few minutes," and that brings up something just about him that I have heard from many elected officials that basically. They could do the work for a local issue, but then he shows up and he ultimately takes control because he's the largest figure in the House. And they say, you've been Schumered, so to speak. In other words, um, on one hand, he appears to be, I don't know, a little bit nerdy. Is that fair? On the other hand, he's now the Senate Majority Leader. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what it's like to get to him and get him to speak to you.
Well, he has never been camera shy, as I'm sure many people would tell you, but he's also never shied away from issues. Back from all the way back when he was a member of the assembly, he was someone who, yeah, liked to be in the limelight, but wasn't afraid to, get down and dirty on the issues. But that also means he's very busy. And in my case, I got literally 5 minutes with him. He was very willing to talk, but it was a very quick 5 minutes before he was ushered on to whatever his next agenda item was that day. He's very busy, but always makes time for a quick photo op in our case.
And there he was. He got this cover of a highly regarded and important political magazine. So I guess it's pretty interesting because you weren't able to have a ton of time with him to really get into his innermost thoughts. So your task was to go around and talk to others who have served with him or knew him. What was their real impression of them? Were they happy to talk? Did they feel like they'd been Schumered a little bit? How did they portray it?
Well, for the most part, I think that Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul really had, something interesting to say in that, she is also someone who, if you know her public schedule as reporters do, she is all over the state all the time, every single day. And, she said that she really learned that from Schumer and his, 62 county tour across the state every year about how he often beats her by a couple of weeks. There definitely was an appreciation for, how focused on New York issues he has always been, and a belief that he will continue to be despite his very high position, his very important position in growing national importance. A lot of people said that they don't think that this will mean that we're going to stop getting those Sunday press conferences. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop getting Charles Schumer advocating on, or I don't know, better mail service in Westchester. That he will use his power for the benefit of New York, and I think that we're starting to see that already. What with the details coming out about the latest stimulus package, I think was it 50 billion for New York, 12.6 billion for the state government, which for me as a reporter certainly higher than I thought that New York was going to get out of it, considering it was asking for 15 billion. That's pretty close to the mark.
He is, in fact, the title really, and a lot of actually the inside title. I have to open it. That you call, or the magazine called him America's Brooklynite. He's never not going to be a New Yorker, which leads me, I guess, to the next train of thought. And you've already touched on it. There's a lot of anticipation that New York is going to do very well now because he's the majority leader. And you're saying that the proposed budgets are starting to look like, in fact, yes, that's the case. I have my eye on the MTA. I'd like to, I don't know what the exact numbers are. It could be about $4 billion. Wouldn't be the worst thing if he basically saved our public transit system.
Oh, certainly. And I know that there's definitely a lot of concern. Schumer has been not just for funding, but, at the forefront of advocating for transit projects like Gateway. And there is a lot of people who I think were a little concerned about Pete Buttigieg getting appointed for transportation commissioner, wondering, is he going to give the amount of attention that New Yorkers have been asking for and demanding and really hoping for? And we got Amtrak Joe in the White House, and you got Schumer now as the majority leader. I think that this is going to usher in a good thing for New York. Gateway. Well, I guess depending on where you fall on whether Gateway is good or bad. Daily News has their opinion certainly if you read their editorials. But congestion pricing is another thing that people are really hoping that Schumer will be able to finally push through that federal approval. So not just funding for the MTA, which is obviously super crucial right now, but a lot of those infrastructure projects and other general transportation needs in the state and in New York City.
Among the types of statements that you see, the undercurrent, if you will, on social media, is that he was, through the Trump years, not strong enough. I mean, he was the minority leader. We get that he was not strong enough. I even saw some people saying, they didn't really think he was masterful enough in his post impeachment trial statement. Uh, do you have, I don't know how you want to, do you want to editorialize about that, or do you want to weigh in? Did people say, he gets the job done, but sometimes he's doesn't really be forceful enough in the way he comes across?
It's a tough situation to be in, and he certainly has had his critics, especially left leaning critics who say that he, not just during the Trump years, but just has never really been left leaning enough. And there is some valid criticism there in terms of how forceful he could have been, but at the same time, he was only the minority leader, and he's in an incredibly precarious situation now, a 50-50 split Senate with Kamala Harris becoming the deciding vote. One lone Democrat could, mess up every calculation. We know that very well in New York. We had one lone Democrat who became a kingmaker in Simca Felder for many years. that we could see that playing out. We can see that Albany dysfunction potentially playing out at the national level. And Chuck Schumer is in the position to try to make sure that doesn't happen. So there are criticisms. There certainly have been plenty of criticisms, plenty of protests to hold him to account, make sure that he was always trying to hold Trump accountable and Republicans accountable during his time as minority leader. But there's only so much he could do then, and really there's only so much he can do now, given that it is a very divided, very slim majority that he has.
Maybe a true measure of his strength would not be the public perception of how well he commandeers the microphone and in front of the Senate, but how well he keeps his coalition together. And you said that even I appreciate it very much that you said even one Democrat who steps out and all of a sudden there goes your stimulus bill or whatever it is, infrastructure and anything else. We got about a minute and a half. I just wanted to switch gears a little bit. You were today, now we're recording this on Monday, the 15th. You covered the governor today. Any interesting news, any interesting impressions from the governor's press conference today?
Well, it was his first press conference since news broke that his top aide was privately apologizing for not giving full accounting of nursing home data to state legislators. And he was very much on the defensive, explaining that the DOJ probe request for information was taking precedence, that the state was, trying to handle a pandemic, that there was COVID in the nursing homes already. Once again, the same kind of defense that we've heard from him defending that March 25th order saying that nursing homes had to accept COVID positive but medically stable patients. It was definitely interesting to see, but it's his first public statement too, since people have started to call for, in earnest, call for the revocation of his emergency powers, and as I guess to a lesser extent and probably much less likely to happen, potentially even an impeachment. So it was. He was giving really his first statements on the record about all of these things today.
Let me ask you this just before we run out of time, and you can be a prognosticator if you want. Do you think it's going to stick? Do you think the impeachment thing is going to be very hard to do? I can't. I mean, both houses are control. I don't know what the process is. We've been through it in the federal government. I don't know what it is in the state.
It's been quite a while since the state has impeached a governor.
Yeah, I don't even. I haven't even thought of the concept. But do you think it will stick in some form and hurt him? I mean, it already has hurt him, but I'm talking about in a large way. Got about 30 seconds to do it.
It's something. It is something we've discussed. In the newsroom. What does this mean for 2022? And it's so tough to say. He is certainly no stranger to political controversy, to potential corruption and charges of the like that have never seemed to stick. But this could be different. In the past, there weren't deaths involved, and there are deaths involved this time.
Rebecca C. Lewis from City and State New York, thank you so much. Thanks for the great work on Charles Schumer. If you don't subscribe to City and State New York, you're making a mistake. It's just a wonderful, wonderful publication. And Rebecca, you're really important to them and to us. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you calling me to come and speak.
We'll get you again. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to switch hats. We'll switch ties. And we'll be right back. We're going to talk arts in the Bronx. Don't go away.